Oh, hi everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pierre the Chef. I am Steve, joined as always by my very good pal Christopher. How are you, my friend?
I am doing okay. Finally digging out from the ice storm last week. We got enough hard ice banging on the side of the house that it woke me up twice the night that it was falling, which was last Friday. And I just got back into the garage today, so it took like 7 days before I got to the point where I get in the garage because it was
Jesus.
the garage has wooden doors that swing outward, and the ice, the level of ice, we had a couple inches of like it's just solidified, like the shovel didn't even dent it, and I had to wait for it to get warm enough to get out. So basically, I couldn't get into the garage for. We don't park in the garage anyway because it's too full of other stuff. But still, yeah. So that was the big thing I did yesterday. I shoveled out the garage a week after we actually had the storm that froze it in.
That sounds like so much fun.
No,
It's not really. It wasn't fun.
did you get the ice storm down there?
We got a little tiny bit. A
We
little
got
tiny bit.
we got like two or three we got like probably about 2 inches of like ice that ended up freezing solid. So that was a joy.
Yeah, so 7 days to get back in
I,
the
I put
garage.
I put all my work into just getting the driveway sorted out, and I wasn't willing to put the extra into getting into the garage. I mean, the trash is in there that goes out on Monday, but I was in no hurry. I was freezing. It can stay in there an extra week. And then Monday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so they were closed. We had a huge snowstorm, so they were dealing with snow Tuesday and Wednesday. They didn't pick up the garbage until I think Thursday. It's a Monday pickup. They picked it up on Thursday, and they didn't do the recycling at all last week because they've been a little bit overwhelmed
Well, I mean,
plowing roads and stuff.
I mean, our civilization is about to be destroyed by global warming anyway. So, I mean, why do we even bother with recycling at this point?
Enjoy the ice storms while you can.
Yeah, yes, there may be a time sooner than you think when you will pine for the days of ice storms. Remember when ice used to fall from the sky? That was great, wasn't it? It'll be
Now
like
it's
the
now
it'll be
it's
like
raining goddamn steam.
yeah, it's raining steam. The clouds shoot down on us from the sky. It'll be like the twist ending of that Twilight Zone episode. I hope I'm not spoiling it for anyone, but the one where for almost the whole episode everything's getting really hot because the Earth is orbiting closer to the sun, and then the twist ending is that she wakes up and in reality it's actually getting cold and everything's freezing because the Earth is moving.
She was having a fever dream.
Ah, yes, exactly, yes, exactly. And she's like, wouldn't it be nice? Or she wakes up and she's been dreaming that everything's super hot. And she's like, oh, isn't it nice to have darkness and coolness? And her neighbor is like, yeah, we're all going to freeze to death. That's great. Anyway, so yeah, I do have a question.
You do have a question?
I have a question for you.
For me.
Because you seem to be the one who knows. Okay. You always have this information when I, for some reason, am left out of the loop.
Well, I think I know where you're going with this, and if you are, I think it's just that my name comes up first in alphabetical order in his contact list, and he's just too lazy to scroll all the way down.
Is that why? Why?
I suspect.
Okay,
I don't know that for certain. I've never discussed it with him, but I think that's what's going on.
So I'm just going to go ahead and say it, just so anybody, just in case people watching don't know what's going on. Let's just lay it all out there.
Yeah, because
yeah. No,
where over this?
Where is Pierre?
I am not happy with him right now. We have excused absence on unexcused. We give him credit. This is not excused. He actually complained that he's unhappy with some of the directions we've gone and some of the topics that we've discussed.
Is he?
Yes.
He's unhappy with the direction that we've gone in the show.
Yeah, and I've basically his position was we don't really discuss things that he's necessarily interested in. We don't take his comments into account. My position was, if you want your opinion to matter, show up.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not going to be heard if you're not there.
I think that's a very important lesson that we should all internalize in our everyday lives.
Yeah, so I mean, we went on in this for like 20 minutes. It went nowhere, but he's not happy with some of the things that we've gone over. He wasn't happy. I mentioned the whole mall Santa thing, which whatever. I mean, it's a job.
I mean, yeah, was it a secret? Was it? I mean, was it? Did he not want anybody to know?
Maybe it's pride. I don't know. But he was unhappy with. So he's not here. But he was expressing his frustration with the direction of the show and some of the topics we've discussed. Some of them. He was saying that some of them haven't interested him the way that others would.
Oh, some of them haven't interested him. This is inside baseball. I hope this isn't too behind the scenes for the folks watching. But
yeah, I mean, I know this. But why don't you explain it to me anyway, just so we know we're on the same page?
This is just for the people watching, okay? Because we both know this. But that we have a group chat that's me, you, and Pierre, where we post messages to each other. We plan the show. I should say you and I plan the show because Pierre. And what really pisses me off is even though he never responds in that group chat, I suspect because I'm the one who set it up, and I don't know why he's afraid to talk to me, but you can see that he has read the message.
I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, who ain't, right? You can see that he has read the messages. It gives you that little indication, that little notification at the bottom. It says, this message has been seen by Christopher and Pierre, right? And so I know he's reading it, but he never responds. And he has the temerity to complain to you that he doesn't like the direction that the show has taken.
What can you do?
I guess we keep doing the show without him. I guess that's what you can do.
Yeah. He's still welcome. Pierre, you're still welcome to show up anytime.
Yes, you are welcome to show up anytime.
Preferably when we're doing the show. Preferably when we're doing the show. But you're welcome to show up for any show we do. We generally announce these things a little bit in advance. You have more advance notice than most people. Yeah,
we know before anybody. And I mean, all you have to, Pierre, I post the link in the chat. All you have to do is click the link and boom, there you are. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just keep doing the show without you, Pierre. The show that we named for you that you've never appeared on. We'll just keep doing it. We'll just keep doing it without you. Because we're the ones who show up. We're the ones who show up, which means we get to decide what direction the show takes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how these things work. That's how they've always worked.
And it would be one thing if there were some, external factor preventing Pierre from being here. And I suppose in the past, maybe there has been, but I think I'm starting to get the impression that he just doesn't, his heart's just not in it. He just,
yeah, he can show, he can show up. We're not Tom Cotton. We're not sending cease and desist letters.
No, no, we're not. Stop writing to me, constituents.
Yeah. I'm representing you. I don't care what you think.
Stop. Yeah, leave me alone.
I am a representative of the people being the corporate donors, and the hell with everyone else.
Exactly. Oh, boy. November come fast. Hey, speaking of which, that's the topic for the show. We're going to talk about how horribly broken our democracy is in the United States. Because we like to start the new year off with something cheerful.
Yeah. Then starting off being like the 21st.
Yeah. Well, but you know what? It worked out perfectly because we planned this topic like a month ago. You suggested it, and I said, yeah, sure, whatever. And
that's pretty much exactly how Pierre reacts.
That's how all the the podcast that I host with Jason Harding runs very similarly, where he'll say, hey, what movie do you want to do next? Oh, I don't know. What about this movie? Yeah, okay. And that's pretty much it.
Occasionally it goes the other way. Like when you were like, why don't we do an episode about South Park? I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have considered that. Sure, why not?
Yeah, everyone.
You had a topic.
Fuck it.
Simple as that.
Yeah. But it turns out it worked out pretty well because this wound up being the weekend that we decided we could do the show. And this is not only the first anniversary of the Trump inauguration, but we're in the midst at the moment of a government shutdown. So what better opportunity, what better occasion to talk about how broken and fucked our democracy is?
So do we currently have a functioning democracy? On several levels, no.
Yeah, technically, at the federal level, you could say that we don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that democracy is gone. It's just that it's taking a savage beating, and it's not doing too well right now.
Yeah,
there are places where the will of the people is heard, but it's not a lot of places, and it's not enough.
Yeah, it's Rocky in the middle of the movie, not Rocky at the end of the movie. You know,
kind of like the whole net neutrality thing, where the vote to overturn net neutrality rules was decided by a panel of unelected representatives who just were put there by corporations, and who made the decision that about 70 or 80% of Americans disagreed with.
Yeah,
the number.
Yeah, overwhelmingly, the country supports keeping net neutrality as policy, because that's obviously the best policy for regular folks who want to use the internet. But because the people who make money selling the internet wanted the other policy, that's what we've got. Yeah, and it's you could make a similar argument. It not quite as broadly, but the thing that has held up the budget, and the reason why the government is currently shut down, is because of the disagreement over reauthorizing DACA, the Deferred Action Childhood Arrival Immigration Policy that the Obama administration began, and that Trump claims that he loves, but he ended it anyway.
I love this so much, I'm going to put a bullet in it. It's sort of the same mindset as trophy hunters.
Yeah, exactly. I just think they're so beautiful. That's why I want to murder them and hang their heads on my wall.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful piece of nature. Let's shoot that sumbitch.
Let's kill it and decapitate it and rip its skin off and stretch it around a frame and stuff it with sawdust and put glass eyes in it and hang it on the wall and pretend that that's still the thing that was alive. But yeah, so. So and that's what the major hangup is in Congress right now, because the Democrats are showing an uncharacteristic display of backbone and are saying we're not voting for anything until we get a DACA fix, because there's thousands of people in this country who don't know whether they're going to be allowed to stay or not, and we think that's incredibly wrong, and we want to fix this before we do anything else. And DACA, like net neutrality, is a widely popular program. Most people believe that people who came to this country as children, whether they were undocumented or not, should not just be shoved back over the border. That's not fair. That's not humane. That's not, a good thing.
Or being deported after living here as a productive citizen for 30 years.
For 30 years, yeah.
Which is happening. And, they're married, they're productive members of society, they have jobs, they work, and they're being kicked out and families broken up because Trump is playing to the base of people who think that any immigrant is a criminal.
Yeah, exactly. And most people,
because at the core, this is racism. That's what's motivating.
Oh, of course. That's exactly what it is. That's why I think that there are various polls. You can never tell for sure, but DACA seems to be. I've seen 70 to 80% of people say that they support. Maybe they don't support DACA by name, but they support letting the so-called dreamers, the people that are protected by DACA, they support letting them stay or giving them some legal status, not deporting them. And yet the Republicans...
It's a case where you have to explain what it does and people support it. If you give them the name because of the toxic conservative talk radio culture and, turning people against certain terms and making them scary, even though people don't understand them, if you explain what it does in general terms, they'll support it. If you say, do you support the act that does that by name, they've been conditioned to respond badly to the name, and so they say no. It's like shortly after the Affordable Care Act was passed, they did a number of polls where they would ask, do you think that people should have this and this and this and this? Overwhelming support. And they said, do you support the Obamacare? And they're like, hell no. It's like, but all of those things are in Obamacare. And they're like, what? No, they're not.
Exactly. You break it down piece by piece, and they love it. You give it the wrong name, and they think it's the worst thing ever. But yeah, and DACA is broadly supported by the public, and yet the Republicans.
That's part of the reason that democracy is struggling, because the vote is in the hands of extremely uneducated people who aren't interested in becoming better informed.
Yes, and there's a political establishment in this country, mostly on the right. I won't say the Democrats have not taken advantage of this themselves in the past, because of course they have, but it seems like it leans much more to the right than the left. At least, you know, it has in our lifetime.
Many blanket statements that you can make about certain things when it's not exclusive to the right, but the vast majority of it is to the right, and they're a lot more brazen about it.
Yeah, and they have a vested interest in not only keeping the electorate ignorant, but keeping them disengaged, discouraging them from voting, or making it difficult for folks who do want to vote to be able to vote. You know, that's something that I don't know if you've seen the Obama interview that David Letterman did on,
no, not yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I watched it. I think I watched it the day or the day after it was released, and it was really, really good. It's like an hour of nothing but Obama and Letterman, and with there are a few little pre-tapes of Letterman in Selma with John Lewis as well, which are really good. But he's talking to Obama for most of this, and I mean, it just makes me want to cry, because it's like, this guy was president a year ago, and I mean, obviously he was far from a perfect president, and he certainly had his flaws, and he certainly had his major failures as president. But I mean, he is so informed and intelligent and thoughtful and compassionate and dignified, and you just think, Jesus Christ, what the fuck happened?
Yeah, because now we've got Trump, who forgets what the beginning of the sentence was by the time he gets to the end.
Yeah,
he can do a complete 180 on his position in the time it takes him to get to the end of a sentence.
Exactly. And one of the things Obama says in this interview, he makes the point, and I don't know if this is if strictly speaking this is 100% factual, but he says the United States is the only major democracy in the world that actively discourages people from voting. And depending on how you interpret that, that might not be entirely true. He might not have, but the point is, there is a huge apparatus in this country, run particularly by one of our two major political parties, that is dedicated to making sure as few people vote as possible.
And we're not going to mention which party, but you know, they have a lot in common with the Libertarians.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They're libertarians with jobs. Or no,
they're anti-drug libertarians.
They're anti-drug. They're libertarians who don't smoke dope. That's what they are. At least not openly. They don't admit to it.
No, well, they don't admit to anything, but then they end up posting screen captures where you can see the tabs that are open on their browser, and you know, because they don't understand how computers work.
No, you know, when you do screen share, you have to crop it. If there's stuff you don't want people to see, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, but this whole, I mean, not only is there the whole thing against about the whole apparatus to try to prevent people from voting, but you know what would scare them more than anything? Automatic registration once you turn 18.
Oh yeah.
Automatic registration would devastate that. I mean, and the whole gerrymandering, trying to control. Here's how brazen the vote fraud at the government level has become. North Carolina, you've been hearing about the stories about what's gone on in North Carolina.
Yeah.
That the population in the state of registered voters is roughly split 50-50, and they have 13 congressional districts. They managed to get it 10-3 Republican.
Yeah.
And the person in charge of that publicly said the only reason he went 10-3 is they couldn't get it to 11-2. And here's how brazen this is. The logic was they openly admitted that it was partisan gerrymandering because court rulings in the past have declared that gerrymandering on a racial bias is unacceptable, and districts have been redrawn on that. But no district plan, no map plan has ever been rejected on the basis of political bias. And so they, to avoid having it overturned on a racial, on the basis of racial, of trying to discriminate against a specific race.
Yeah.
They openly admitted that they were doing it for partisan political purposes on the grounds that there was no that had never been done before, that had never been overturned. There was no precedent for that, and so they could get away with it if they admitted that that was the reason for it.
Yeah.
And I am not making that up. That is literally what happened.
I mean, why not just not gerrymander at all?
Yeah, because then you wouldn't have any control, because you wouldn't have most of the vote. I mean, the last presidential election where the House of Representatives went heavily Republican, even though there were like millions over. If you compile all of the House races together, Democrats got millions more votes than Republicans did, but Republicans still have a commanding lead in the House.
Yeah,
because of the way the districts are drawn.
Yeah, exactly, and that's one of the reasons I think why it's completely reasonable to say what, the point that I think we would both agree with, that at least on the federal level, that democracy in this country is certainly not dead, but is severely hobbled because when you have a situation where one party wins election not on the basis of getting the most votes or having the most popular candidates or the most widely accepted policies or proposals, but because they cheat and they openly cheat, and everybody's admit to it. Yeah, and everybody's just sort of okay with it, and even in a sick way, kind of admiring of it. Like, oh, those Republicans, boy, you have to admire. It's like, I mean, what the fuck are we doing? When we've all seen those district maps of what some of those gerrymandered districts look like, where it's like a snake cutting through particular neighborhoods. It's absurd.
Not on the federal level. I think on the state level, there were stories some years back here in Pennsylvania, quite a few years back, where some of the districts were one lane of a road going, of a highway to connect two widely separated areas to put them into one district. Like literally, if you cross the street, you go from one district, you cross the second, and end up in a third. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So I guess the cars driving down that one lane.
Well, that's what happens when the representatives pick their people instead of the people picking the representatives.
Yeah, and I mean that's become kind of a pithy way of describing it, but that's true. That's what's going on. I think even Obama has said that before, that the politicians are picking their voters instead of the other way around.
And it's not a functioning, healthy democracy when multiple policies that are supported by 80-90% of the people are being overturned or rejected. Yeah,
exactly. And when there are, I mean, nowadays we could do it technologically. Back, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the proposed fix for gerrymandering was an independent council, or let a judge, or give some unelected, independent, nonpartisan authority the responsibility of drawing the districts, and then the legislative body would just vote up or down. Okay, this looks good or this doesn't look good, but they wouldn't be able to actually get in there and manipulate the districts to their own advantage. Now you could do it by computer. I mean, you could feed in whatever factors need to be considered to create fair districts.
And you get a very clear map of what, the demographics in different areas and so on. You could get pretty much any result you want, depending on what factors you tell the computer to prioritize.
Yeah, if you want to make sure, for instance, that districts are not overwhelmingly segregated by race, then factor that in to make sure that there's a fair percentage of a representative percentage of people of the various ethnic groups that live in a given area in each district. I mean, there are ways of doing it that would be completely fair, or at least a lot more fair than letting the political party in power draw the boundaries. And yet we continually refuse to do that. Or not we the voters, but the people we've elected continually refuse to do that because one particular party depends on having it that way to win. And the other party is so chicken shit that when they do get in power, they don't fix it. They just leave it the way it is. Or even worse, sometimes they take it and they use the same thing to their advantage, which loses them a lot of leverage.
which they don't have to do because most of their policies are better favored by the majority of the people. And in a clear democracy, you wouldn't need to cheat to do this. You could just let it up to the people and support what your representatives say, and you would still accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, there's a reason why the Republicans...
Well, I've said for a long time, I've broken it down to this. Republicans are evil and Democrats are useless.
That's, yeah.
Up in one word, those are the words I would choose for Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's the most frustrating thing about it is that, I mean, you know, there are people who say, you know, well, even if the Democrats do, even if there actually is the blue tidal wave this November in the midterms and the Democrats take things over, you know, and they retake control of the Senate and the House of Representatives, that, well, you know, they wouldn't necessarily take any action against President Trump. And I'm just like, well, then why are we even voting for these people? I mean, because to me, the idea of Trump being a legitimate president, and we're getting outside of our 5 minutes of Trump thing, but whatever. It's hard to not talk about him when the subject is how fucked our democracy is. To me, the idea of Trump as a legitimate president that we can work with cannot possibly still be on the table.
Oh, God, I mean, no. My wife said she read something this morning where they said one of the people said negotiating him is like trying to negotiate with Jell-O.
Yeah.
Every time you take a move, they just bounce and shift and they're 3 steps back from where you started. Exactly.
And I mean, and I know
and you can't negotiate with people who aren't interested in negotiating in good faith.
No, who don't even, in Trump's case, who don't even have convictions to start with to begin a negotiation. You know, I mean, almost every promise the man's ever made has been negotiable, even the stuff that he ran for president on and continues to insist that he still stands for, but clearly in practice he doesn't. Like the border wall.
Mexico paying for the wall? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He keeps saying, well, we're going to have a wall and it's going to be paid for by Mexico. And he keeps saying that, but in practice, he's not, you know, he's not doing anything to...
Wasn't he insisting on funding for the border wall as one of his budget proposals?
He wasn't, and then he was, and then he wasn't, and now he is again. I mean,
well, they said that he actually publicly said something that stood against one of his positions because Fox News had criticized it like half an hour earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, it was...
the most powerful force in the United States right now is Fox News because whatever they say, the president of the United States repeats.
Exactly. And not just
Talking about the ugly American. Donald Trump represents everything that everyone outside this country hates about America.
I've said that before too.
He's the quintessential ugly American.
He's the embodiment of all the worst stereotypes of Americans.
And if you voted for him, you don't have to be racist, but you have to be okay with racism, and you don't have to be sexist, but you have to be perfectly okay with sexism. You don't have to be anti-Semitic, but you have to be okay with anti-Semitism.
Exactly.
And on and on and on.
And on. Yeah. Which in practice is not that different from just being those things. If you don't feel hatred toward other people of different races in your heart, but you're willing to overlook people who do feel that way or who will enact policies that will hurt those people, then it really doesn't make a difference whether you really truly feel that way in here or not. It means nothing.
Wasn't that one of the things that went around Facebook at one point where a person who was saying that they have a grandmother who grew up in Germany and knew that the best Nazis were not the people who wore the uniforms or found people or took them off to the gulag or whatever. Mm-hmm. The best Nazis were the ones who just minded their own business and looked the other way because it didn't concern them. People just stood back and let it happen. The best Nazis were just the people who quietly were like, it's not me, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
let me tell you, looking around right now with what is going on in our government and with what ICE and some of the stuff that they're doing, this country has a lot of good Nazis.
Yeah, well, it's. I know. I keep thinking of that.
And literal Nazis too, but that's a different matter.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of figurative Nazis, and actually an alarmingly large number of actual, legitimate, real, literal Nazis
who know what's actually happened and now aren't horrified by some of the atrocities of the Nazis, and they look at it as a feature.
Yeah, exactly.
Which in many ways is much worse.
Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking of that Eli Wiesel quote that you see shared on social media every once in a while because it's very memeable, where he says, "Not taking sides always hurts. Not taking sides always helps the oppressor. It never helps the oppressed." And there are a lot of people who still refuse to learn that lesson. We have made such a virtue in this country of neutrality, and we have lost sight of the fact that in some situations there's no such thing as neutrality. You cannot say, and if you are pretending to be neutral, you are actually on the side of the oppressor. You are on the side of in this case, like the people who support Trump, people who support the Republicans.
If you're taking a neutral position that isn't against Jerry Sandusky, then you're kind of
guess what?
Side of for him.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't believe that went around recently. That was just unbelievable.
It's disgusting. It is. The worst part of it is okay. Sidebar. Jerry Sandusky talk for a second. The worst part of that is the whole basis on which he was being defended, on which his conviction was being questioned, was that the witnesses against him, that is his victims, were testifying on the basis of recovered memory. And recovered memory is a very dodgy science. There's a lot about recovered memory with people who remember things through hypnosis or through other forms of therapy. Like, that's a very dodgy science. The problem is he wasn't actually convicted on the basis of that.
No.
And that was something that his lawyers brought up on his first appeal. They said, we deserve another trial because recovered memory is bogus science. And the judge, if you read the appellate court's decision, one of the things that the judge specifically says is the claim that Sandusky was convicted on the basis of recovered memory testimony is without merit. And it's dismissed as being without merit. And yet, for some reason, these prominent skeptics felt compelled to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of their readers as to whether or not one of the most notorious pedophiles in modern American history is actually innocent, based on the use of this dodgy science, which wasn't actually used. So not only are they defending a fucking child molester, they're doing it for no real reason, because the thing they're objecting to has nothing to do with his actual case. And this was published on the website of a magazine that is called Skeptic. It's fucking pathetic. Not only is it unconscionably wrong and immoral and depraved, it's pathetic.
Yeah, don't leave your mind so open that your reason falls out. You know, we had a whole show about problematic people. We mentioned Paterno. Paterno is problematic. Sandusky is not.
No, Sandusky is evil. There aren't gray areas.
So is what's his name? I just read about Larry Nassar, somebody who's with the medical staff at Michigan State University and sexually harassed and assaulted women for like 20 years, and apparently nobody at Michigan State is going to lose their job over this.
Yeah,
people who knew, people who protected, people who didn't pursue, and that's fine. As I said rather sarcastically, it's nothing like Sandusky because his victims were young boys, and the victims in this case are only women.
Yeah, so and women make shit up, right? Women lie about that all the time, because every little girl dreams of growing up to be a sexual assault survivor,
and to lie about it, and then to get the death threats from the people who defend sexual assault.
Exactly. It sounds like fun to me. I don't know about you,
because I like the anonymous death and rape threats from total strangers.
They're
so we get off the sidebar, because we could go on a very big tangent.
Let's hear this. Let's get back on the road. But I mean, the general idea is that it's difficult to call our democracy a functioning democracy when voter turnout is as low as it is, when public officials feel comfortable brazenly disregarding public opinion as often and as openly as they do,
and still somehow get reelected.
The incumbency rate. That's one of those statistics that has been around for as long as I've been alive, that every time it's brought up, everybody goes, where, Congress almost always has a very, very low approval rating, but the incumbency rate in Congress is like 85, 90%. People who are already in Congress get reelected overwhelmingly more often than new people win elections. And
once they're in office, they can campaign on, if elected, I will have my constituents harvested for organs, then run down the remains for parts to sell. And they will still get reelected.
Yeah, because the voters in their district will be like, well, but better the devil you know.
I'm sure they'll take black people's organs first.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be fine.
I will take the organs of the poor and the black. Don't worry, all you white working class people. And then I'll get to campaign as the working class candidate, because everybody knows when you say he's supported by the working class, they really mean the white working class, because that's what they say about Trump. They say, well, he's got the support of the working class. Which part of the working class? Because the black working class sure as hell didn't vote for him. It was the white working class that voted for him. But to get back to what we were saying a few minutes ago about, I wanted to make the point about why I'm concerned about how the Democrats will handle Trump if they do actually retake Congress after the midterms.
Because the Democrats are not campaigning properly. They're not making an argument like, we will support DACA, we will support Dreamer, we will support public education, we will support student loan reform. They're campaigning on, well, we're not Trump. Look how bad he is.
Exactly. And campaigning on that is bad enough because it's not really substantive. It's reactive. And that's, as much as I agree with them and much as I'm glad that they're not Trump, it's reactionary. There's not a lot of substance to it.
You need to give people something to vote for, not something to vote against.
But also, if they do go that route, and they're already going that route, I mean, and I think a lot of local races, a lot of House of Representative races, it'll probably be the Democrats running against a Republican saying, well, they supported Trump, their own team Trump, I'm not, so vote for me. And the problem with that is, if that's the way they go, and that is what sweeps them into office, and then once they get there, they say, well, let's hear President Trump out and let's see if we can work together. I mean, you can't imagine a greater betrayal than that. You can't run and stake the identity of your party on the Republican president is unfit for office and we need to do something about it. And then when you win and you get your majority back, you say, well, let's give him a chance. Maybe he'll see things our way. No.
Didn't Obama recently say something about you can't run a divisive campaign because you won't be able to lead afterwards? Because once you've divided people, you won't be able to pull them back together.
Right, exactly.
And that's the strategy that it's rumored that the Democrats are going to go with. To a lesser extent, they're not against women and minorities and gays and blah blah blah, but they are against Trump. It's still against something rather than for something, and it's not a cohesive plan. The Democrats have to stand for something, and it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
because they really don't do a good job getting any sort of message out, and then they can't agree on it, and they squabble. And so, Republicans will stand by their guy no matter what.
Yeah,
I mean, we've got sexual assault allegations against children, or sexual assault against children allegations against Donald Trump, and people are like, "That's not a problem." I mean, it recently came out that he paid like 6 figures to a porn star to try to cover up an extramarital affair.
Yeah.
If Barack Obama had 5 children from 3 women and had cheated on his wife for a porn star and then paid hush money to her, I think that might be a little bit less accepted than they're accepting it from Trump.
Yeah, but
call it a hunch.
Something tells me, but you just nailed it in the fact that no matter what, they stick with their guy. They circle the wagons and it doesn't matter. And to those of us on the outside, that just demonstrates how craven and completely without conscience and conviction that they truly are. Because you can't spend the last 40 years courting the religious right and the Christian conservatives and saying, we're the party of family values and we're the party of life and we're the party where character counts. And then you nominate and elect Donald Trump, knowing all of the fucked up shit in his past. And
you support Roy Moore.
And you support Roy Moore. You continue to support Trump even after the flood of revelations continues to pour out about him. And so, okay, so none of that.
Arpaio.
Yeah, they're supporting. Yeah, exactly. Arpaio, who went to jail for being a racist sheriff.
In fact, the only reason he's not in prison right now is that Trump pardoned him for his crimes that he was convicted of. Because law and order.
Joe Arpaio was so racist that a federal court said, Sheriff Joe, you're too racist. Stop being so racist. And Sheriff Joe said, fuck you. He kept on being racist. And they said, okay, well, you have to go to prison. And then Donald Trump said, well, he's just doing his job, and pardoned him.
But that's democracy,
yeah.
Because if just overturn the rule of the land because he hates the same people you do, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember who said this originally. I think I heard it attributed to Lyndon Johnson once, where he said, if you can convince the lowest white man that he's higher than the highest black man, then you can win. Mm-hmm. And that has been the Republican strategy in this country for as long as I can remember, since when my parents were children. That's been the strategy. That wasn't
it as far as they're trying to hide the vote, trying to dissuade people from voting. Wasn't it Alabama that after part of the Voting Rights Act was overturned, they basically started requiring a photo ID, like a driver's license, and then closed like 50 driver's license centers in the predominantly black counties in the state?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to get more brazen than that.
Yeah.
This is democracy. We don't want you voting. We don't want you participating.
And if anything,
that's another example of elected people trying to choose their voters. Well, black people won't vote for me, so instead of trying to appeal to them, I'm just going to try to keep them from voting completely.
Right. I'm going to make sure that they can't vote for anybody. And when that pre-clearance section of the Voting Rights Act was invalidated by the Supreme Court, and of course the argument was, well, we don't need it anymore because times have changed.
But that's ridiculous. It was like the times have changed because of that. That's like saying, I have a bad heart condition, I started taking the medication. Now I'm fine. Clearly, I don't need the medication anymore.
Exactly. Or you change your diet and start exercising and lose a ton of weight and get in shape, and then you look at yourself in the mirror one day and go, you know what, I'm in pretty good shape. So you go back to the old diet and stop exercising, and a year later you've gained 50 pounds and you're tired all the time and you look like shit, and you think, well, I thought I was in shape. Like, it's not the way it works. I mean, within weeks of that Supreme Court decision, there were jurisdictions like what you were talking about in Alabama, and mostly throughout
the South.
Mostly throughout the South for some reason.
The Bible Belt, the very carefully religious people who support the child molester in Alabama.
Exactly. They acted.
The child who was banned from the local mall because the mall has higher standards than the Republican Party does.
Yeah. I mean, you have these jurisdictions that almost immediately were acting to enact laws that would have been illegal under the Voting Rights Act. And as soon as that clause of the Voting Rights Act was invalidated, they immediately began passing those laws.
Because they were already in place, just in case.
Yeah, exactly. They went into effect automatically. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that, no, actually, the problem does still exist. Never mind that black folks have been saying that for 50 years. I mean, it's not like I've never been aware of a vocal majority of black American voters saying, no, actually, everything's pretty good now. Like, black folks have been saying this all along. No, actually, things are still really bad. There's still a lot of very serious problems, and we would love to really address these problems. And there's all of us white folks who are like, well, I don't know, though. We passed that Voting Rights Act. Everything seems pretty good. In fact, it seems so good. Do we really need that Voting Rights Act? I mean,
yeah, when Oberman was still with ESPN, he had written that if you're a white person, you look at it this period in like the 1960s or so, where white people actually started working in the right direction and stopped being so much of the problem. He said, if you're a black person, that line isn't so clear.
No, and what really makes it frustrating, I would imagine, because it's frustrating for me as a white person, and I can only imagine how frustrating it must be for a black person who takes this view of things, is, even sometimes when one of us white folks will acknowledge that there are still a great many serious problems with racism in this country, for some reason, we're still really invested in getting a black person to admit that things are better. It's like, yeah, okay, we'll acknowledge, yeah, there are still problems, but I mean, come on, it's better than it was in the 60s, right? Like, why are we so invested in extracting that answer from people?
Because
why do we need them to say that it's better?
Because then we can pretend that things have improved, and so we can assume they're going to continue improving. We don't have to change anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and again, we're kind of going off the topic again, but it's just, it reminds me of the reactions that a lot of people are having to the Aziz Ansari story, where it's like, even people who acknowledge that, according to the account of the woman in the article, that Aziz Ansari's behavior was bad. It's like, yeah, but it wasn't rape. You have to admit that. Like, why are you so invested in getting me to admit that, yes, okay, it wasn't as bad as it could have been? Why does that matter to you? That's not the point. The point is he acted inappropriately, and it's a lesson that we should take, that we shouldn't act that way if we're ever in that situation in the future. Why do you have to get me to admit that he's not the worst person who ever lived? Why is that important?
I've never really bought the whole argument of, well, people elsewhere have it worse, so you should be grateful.
Yeah.
It's like that. What they mean is people elsewhere have it worse, so you shouldn't try to do any better.
Yeah, exactly. Or you shouldn't complain. Oh, I got shot in the chest. Well, that guy over there got shot in the head. What are you complaining about?
Yeah.
You're right. I should just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah. At least we don't have a dictator. You know, things aren't doing well here, but democracies are doing. There are places that don't even have democracy. Yeah. What are you complaining about? You still get to vote. Your vote might count.
Depending on where you live and what color you are and how much money you have.
And who owns the electronic voting machines where everything goes into software, you can rig it however the hell you want.
Oh, and that's a shame. That's a shame too, because I love those electronic voting machines. I mean, it's a shame that they're so easily fucked with, because we only had them for 2 elections in my district. Yeah. And man, I loved them. Oh, it was like ordering food at Sheets. You just go up and you just push, Barack Obama, and it lights up. Huh?
There's an analogy. Like,
yeah, and that's
like ordering food at Sheets.
And that's a regional one too, because people who live outside the Sheets area will be like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Or Wawa.
Wawa, yeah. I mean, it's like a gas station, but you can get food there. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Or Turkey Hill, like you can get gas and you can get food, and they have little things, and you push it and they make food for you, and then you take the food and then you eat the food. That's how it works. And voting was a lot like that.
Except for the whole part about food.
Except you didn't get food. You
get an unvoted pin, and then you probably shouldn't swallow it, because it'll you have to think
the election volunteers. The election volunteers didn't feed you, but other than that, it was pretty much the same.
One of these other things here about, well, maybe I don't know if he's going to. I don't want to get too far off topic here, but what?
Ah, shit.
We can do the topic for another time.
Okay.
Do another time.
Well, let me ask you this: since did you want to do 5 minutes of Trump? We've mentioned him a little bit.
Well, I never really want to do 5 minutes of Trump.
I don't either.
But at this point, I mean, didn't he even undercut the entire shutdown thing because he was pulling in different direction? How do you negotiate with a person who doesn't even know what direction he's going to be pulling in 30 seconds from now?
My favorite bit of the Trump role in this shutdown is a few weeks ago, if you'll remember. Because everybody's known for months that this was coming.
So are we doing the 5 minutes of Trump then?
You want to? Fuck it. I'll start the timer.
Do we have the on-screen timer?
We do. Okay. There's a story here. All right.
Oh,
before we get to the 5 minutes of Trump, I have to share this with you. Okay.
Here's an idea. Can we make the telling of the story part of the 5 minutes of Trump?
Let's do that. The 5 minutes of Trump will be my story of why there is no on-screen timer. I'm starting it now. Okay, the timer has started. Okay, so listen.
Okay,
you guys, you folks, everybody watching, and of course Christopher, who has already sort of heard this story. I had such. You lived it. I had such high hopes for Pierre the Chef this year. I still hope to realize these dreams at some point on some future show if I can resolve these issues. But we were instead of, because you can probably tell when you watch it, we do this through a Google Hangout. We do it the easy way. And I wanted to take this show to the next level. I wanted to stream it through some streaming software. I downloaded my own encoding software, and we were going to have on-screen graphics. We were going to have a title card. It was going to be fantastic.
We were hitting the big time.
Yeah. I traveled to, I went to the top of the mountain, and I asked I asked the Oracle, how do you get an on-screen timer for
Are you
for
really
live
the head
stream?
of the Quickie Mart? Really? You?
Thank you. Come again. So, but and lo and behold, Christopher and I were setting up to do just that about 15 minutes before we went on the air today, and my computer froze, and I got blue screen of death, and it crashed, and and he texted me and said, "Hey, did you just crash?" And I said, "Yeah, we'll just have to do it the old-fashioned way." So
I want to say that I still love the concept of there being an old-fashioned way to do live streaming video.
Yeah. You know, back in the old days, we used to do it this way.
Back in the old days, we had Real Player, and all you got was a buffering sign.
Oh boy, yeah, you had to pause it for like 3 times as long as the length of the clip you wanted to play, just so you could listen to it straight through.
It came in at 5K.
Yeah, exactly. I remember. Yeah, so there was going to be an on-screen timer. There was going to be a little title, and it was going to count down, and we were going to have 5 minutes of Trump where you could see the 5-minute thing on the screen, and it was just going to be, it was going to be great. But my computer didn't like that. So I'm going to have to figure out what the problem is. And if it's something that I need to actually get a new computer for, then I will have to deal with that at some other time. But if it's just like a setting I have to change or whatever, or like a network error that I'm encountering, I'm not sure what the deal is, because it's the same thing that happened last month when I was doing my Steve and Stuffy marathon live stream. And it happened this time before we were even on the air. So that might be an issue.
That means the problem's probably on your end in the computer. I'm thinking.
It probably means it's something on my end. Yeah, probably.
I'm saying your computer is like, I'm so sick of all this streaming video. Give me Minecraft or give me death.
Right, exactly. I'm not doing this. Like, I'll do the Hangout thing. I'm not doing this live stream shit. Okay. So that's where we're at for the time being. It'll be Google Hangouts for the foreseeable future until I can sort this out. But yeah, the 5 minutes of Trump.
How much time do we have left of that? By the way,
so much better. We have 2 minutes left. So if we have something that's actually Trump related to talk about, we have 2 minutes that we can burn. Just, we could piss and moan about Trump a little.
It's like you don't even know where to start on this. I still find it astonishing that that people are supporting him despite all the stuff against him. That it's clearly not a matter of principle or ethics. It's party above anything else.
Oh, definitely.
It's like 1984 territory, Big Brother. I mean, and then you're talking about how you're afraid the Democrats are going to get elected and say, well, let's work with them. Weren't there a number of Democrats who voted for a bill that helped to increase surveillance powers of the United States?
Yeah.
Trump is a power-hungry dictator. Let's give him more surveillance power. That's not adding up.
Well, and there's. I mean, I hate to use the word collaborator, but. But there's been an unseemly level of collaboration or cooperation from the Democrats already. I mean, I saw a statistic a couple weeks ago that said there were only, I think, 3 Democratic senators who voted against all of Trump's cabinet nominees, and or who voted against most of them. You know what I mean? I think Kirsten Gillibrand was the only one who voted against all of Trump's cabinet nominees. And I'm thinking, like, okay, so what's the rationale? If you're a Democrat and you see what Trump is, like, what he is.
And you see the people he's trying to put into positions of power.
You see the people he's appointing to government. And, like, what is your rationale for saying, well, I'll let him have this one?
Well, what is the rationale where Claire McCaskill with the shutdown was trying to make certain that death benefits and military pay continued, and McConnell shot it down? What's the motivation? Yeah. It's this blind party. And people still think that Republicans are the party of the people, the party that supports the military. Black NFL players kneeling during the national anthem is disrespectful to the military, but members of Congress killing bills to pay members of the military is perfectly acceptable. Yeah,
it's a little, it's interesting, isn't it? Hey, that's the end of 5 minutes of Trump.
That was one of the smoother 5 minutes of Trump we've done, because we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking directly about Trump, and I approve of that.
It was 3 minutes of me grousing about technical difficulties, and then 2 minutes of Trump.
Yeah, we kind of cheated a bit there, and I will still sleep well tonight.
Yeah, it's not going to upset me. I'm
But I figured we had to do it because we didn't do it last time as a Christmas present to ourselves. We
true.
don't want to get completely out of the habit because we'll never get back to it.
That's true. We want to keep doing it until Trump is no longer president. And if anyone is, say, an elected official watching this and you would like to accelerate the process of Trump no longer being president, I would strongly encourage you to use the powers of your office to do that. You see what I'm saying?
And we would say that you should do it for, we don't want to say you should do it for political reasons. We want to say that you should do it because of basic human decency.
Yeah. Yes. Because you actually care about there still being a country in the near future.
If you actually care about human beings who aren't Republican officials, you probably should stand against Trump.
You should. Next time, hey, next time somebody introduces impeachment articles, I'll maybe vote for them. I'm just saying. Yeah. So anyway, I believe before we went on the air, there was some talk, some suggestion of a Star Wars discussion.
Yes, I was thinking that we could discuss the most recent Star Wars movie, what we like, disliked, about the stupid controversies, if you want to call them that, surrounding it. Yeah. And we could do it in a spoilerific way.
Yeah, okay.
I think at this point the movie's been out over a month and there's not as much expectation that you're not going to stumble across spoilers. But we'll say it anyway. If you haven't seen the Last Jedi yet, we're probably going to blow just about everything in the movie here coming up.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. We will. What we'll do is, okay, I'll give you a countdown. I'll count down from 5, and then anybody who's still watching after that, you've been warned, because we're going to talk about the movie and we're going to spoil the shit out of it. So if you haven't seen The Last Jedi yet and you don't want us to spoil it for you, stop watching now.
We need a countdown.
4, 3. I'm counting up with my fingers. Why am I doing that? 4. 3, 2, 1. Okay, spoiler. Now we're in spoiler space. Okay.
Okay, here we are. There's a reason we haven't hit the big time yet.
Yeah, I know. I can't imagine it myself.
I will say I very much enjoyed the movie.
All my ability. I'll just go. We might as well break the spoiler ice with this, because this is something that I personally was surprised to see when I saw the movie, which is that Yoda is in the movie.
Yes, and Yoda apparently they went back to the animatronics and puppets as opposed to the CGI.
Oh, yes. Bless you, Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson was like, go up in the attic and get the puppet out. Get Frank Oz's ass down here.
George Lucas is like, sets. Who needs sets? I've got a green wall. We can do everything here.
Why are they taking the cameras outside? They're going to shoot on location, George. What?
Yeah. And I really think that it was with jumping around the movie, I guess, since we started with this.
Yeah, fuck it.
It was the Jedi as a concept. You had the vague sense that they were some gallant, wonderful people in the past, and things went very bad. And then because of George Lucas's horrific writing, what we saw of them basically became largely irredeemable.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening, I think it was important that it was the character who was present in the prequels as well, who was part of the Jedi at that time, who's the one who comes out and basically says, no, this didn't work.
Yeah.
Because Luke never experienced the Jedi at their peak and didn't really understand that. The rejection of it more powerfully had to come from someone who did understand it and did participate in it and said, this did not work.
Yeah. And I think that I think that scene is really important, because that's one of the scenes in the movie I've heard some people talk about. And there's a lot of things in this movie that even people who liked it or who liked a lot of it seem to be confused about. And I mean, even if they're not, I mean, I don't mean to say if you didn't like it, you're just confused. Like, you're entitled to not like the fucking movie if you don't like it. But there's that scene with,
as long as your reasons are valid.
Yeah.
Women. No.
Yeah. Too many women. Okay. Just go sit down. Shut up. We're not talking to you. The Luke and Yoda scene is a little bit of a reversal for Luke from where he's been the entire movie, because for the entire movie up to that point, he's been Mr. to hell with the Jedi have to die. I have to be the last Jedi. And, he's even supposedly going to the old tree to, you know, he's got to, like, he's going to burn the tree. He's going to burn the sacred texts. And then Yoda shows up and he's like, yeah, fuck it, man. Let's do it. And then Luke is like, really? You want, you know, and like the lightning crashes and sets it on fire. And then Luke is like, oh no, but the sacred texts. And
I love the line, page turners they are not.
Yeah. Because what happens is Yoda is basically telling Luke, no, listen, you were on the right track. You hadn't completely let it go yet. You still, even though you were outwardly saying the Jedi mess things up and the Jedi don't have a right to claim ownership of the Force, and like, even though you were saying that, deep down in here, you were still holding on to this romantic idea of the Jedi Order and the sacred texts and blah, blah, blah. And you need to let that go. You know, you need to have the courage to step away from that and to embrace something that's a lot broader than that. And I think that's a really important moment for Luke, you know, because he has to acknowledge that he was still attached to the old ways. And then, but then he also faces the, you know, he has no choice but to let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my analysis.
I did like that scene. I was not expecting Yoda to show up there.
Me neither. Because it's I mean, obviously, Star Wars has done that kind of thing before. Like, you know, people show up as ghosts, but
technically Luke can still show up again in the future.
And I would not be at all surprised if he does. You know what I mean? Like, I would not be surprised at all if we don't catch a little glimpse of Luke's Force ghost in the next movie. I don't expect he'll play a major role, but I wouldn't be surprised.
He won't even be at Obi-Wan Kenobi levels, but he might be there.
He might just pop in. He'll just come in from the side of the frame at the very end and be like,
marketing.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm great on talk shows. They had to have me in it.
One of the dumber complaints, there are a lot of dumb complaints. One of the things I saw was right at the very beginning of the movie. They talked about a strafing run in 0G.
Right.
I'm like, were you paying any attention to the fact that the entire concept in that scene was the person kicking thing, trying to get the vibrations to have the thing fall down to her so she can release them?
Right.
There's no gravity outside the ship, but there is inside where she is, where the entire plot hinges on there being gravity.
There must be gravity.
And then once they activate, they fall out. And once they're out of the ship, sure, there's no gravity, but now they've got inertia. They're already going in that direction.
They're already going down. Exactly. Well, and you know,
people just need something to bitch about.
Well, you know, it just so happens that does have an in-story explanation that you just described. But, you know, it's Star Wars. Just calm the fuck down. Like, since when are we judging Star Wars movies on how accurate the science is? It doesn't. I will never cease to be amazed by people who they'll watch this fucking epic space opera about people who can move shit with their minds and come back from the dead as glowing blue ghosts, and they wave around laser swords and fight each other, and yet they'll find one little niggling scientific inaccuracy, and they'll be like, "But what about that? What the fuck movie are you watching, man?" The Mystery Science Theater theme should play before every science fiction movie. Just repeat to yourself, it's just a show. I should really just relax. Yeah, I mean, I don't. Well, I'll tell you, the only thing, there was a scene, the scene after the first big battle, when Leia is out in space, and it looks like she's a goner, and then.
That is probably the only scene in the movie that I don't think played how they wanted it to.
Yeah,
it had a little bit of a goofy vibe, or didn't quite play right. And I wonder how much of that was the scene and how much is the fact that we know that Carrie Fisher has passed away, and that was overlaid on the scene. I think it's still a little goofy, but I think the fact that people have trouble divorcing that from Carrie Fisher's passing probably made it a bit worse.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. But yeah, that was the only scene in the movie that, as I was sitting there in the theater watching it, that didn't work for me. I mean, I get where they were going with it, and I think the idea of the scene is a good idea, but the way it was shot, the way it played, it seemed, even for Star Wars, it seemed silly. It seemed goofy. It seemed like, because we've never really, I mean, she even kind of did like the Peter Pan thing where she was like flying back. And I was like, oh, that's just, it just feels silly. but yeah, I mean, people, I've seen people, probably the most common complaint that I've heard from people, again, even from people who generally like the movie, is they don't get why the Canto Bight story is important. They don't get why.
And the fact that they don't get why that's important is a large part of the problem with
Yeah.
I mean, that's the people not getting it is sort of the point.
Yes, exactly.
Throughout Star Wars, all we have ever really seen is the Jedi or the remnants of the Jedi fighting against the big evil.
Right.
That's all it's ever been. And wherever we go, they're in the middle of it. But there's an entire galaxy out there outside of this. Right. And what we see for the first time is we step outside of the Jedi and the Rebellion versus the Sith and the Empire. And we see people who are off to the side of it who don't really care. You know, the good Nazis, as we were talking about earlier.
They're just making their money, and
and they don't care. And I think one of the most important things about it was when they're tracking the person's finances and discover that they are making money by selling equipment and ships to both sides. Yeah. And this battle is, these people are fighting, dying for things that they believe in, for, what they believe to be freedom or good government or whatever. And meanwhile, there's other people who this is just profit motive and they don't care. It's off their screen, it's off their radar, it's something that happens out there to other people. Yeah. And they collect their money, they live their life, they have their luxuries, and they don't care about the people dying elsewhere. It's complete apathy to the plight of others. And that, I think, is largely the point of it, that horrible things are happening, and these are just, a lot of these people are just war profiteers.
Yeah. And
I can't imagine anything like that happening in real life. Can you?
No, I know. But see, that's one of the things. Even, and I'm going to get in a second. I want to talk about how the Canto Bight stuff echoes with the main theme of the movie, and actually winds up being really super important with that. But just the idea that Canto Bight sequence is that's as political as mainstream Star Wars has ever gotten.
Oh yeah,
and I think a lot of people responded poorly to that because they're used to Star Wars at least having the appearance of not having anything to say beyond its story,
of being a children's fairy tale placed in outer space.
Yeah, and they just want to see the space battles and the lightsaber fights and likable characters and a few funny lines, and that's all they want. And to see scenes like that where the political commentary is undeniable. Like you can't just pretend that it's just a fun adventure. It's clearly making a statement.
And where people become shades of gray, because Star Wars has always been people are very good and people are very evil, and there's very little nuance. And suddenly you get into a middle ground here, and people don't know how to take that because they have trouble dealing with the fact that you can have good and bad coexisting.
Yeah, yeah, and you have one of our main characters, Finn, having to come to that realization himself.
Yeah. Was there anything that Finn did in the movie that he didn't completely fuck up? Everything he did went wrong.
I mean,
you can largely say that he's the main reason why, by the end of the movie, the rebellion was a couple of people on the Millennium Falcon. It went from several ships able to do strafing runs against dreadnoughts down to a couple people on one freighter ship.
Right. But as far as nice going, Finn. Good job.
Yeah, he did well, but you know what it was? He was trying to be a hero.
Yes.
Instead of letting it happen, his goal was his ultimate goal was not we need to get this or we need to win this battle, we need to accomplish this goal. His goal was I want to be a hero. How do I do that? By going in and attacking this huge ship and suffering heavy losses, but destroying it and considering it a victory.
Right. He was seeking personal redemption or personal heroism, but the last point about the Canto Bight stuff that I want to make is, if you look at how Luke's story goes, and you look at how Rey's story goes, and you look at what Yoda says, which is that you need to and what Luke says to Rey earlier in the film, which winds up being really important, where he says when he teaches her about the Force, and he teaches her to recognize and feel the Force. And then he says, the Jedi don't own that. And that becomes a really, really important idea in the movie. And we see the final shot of the film is the little kid that we first met in the Canto Bight sequence, pulling the broom to himself with the force and sweeping up and looking up at the stars. That's what the movie is about. You can't ignore the Canto Bight stuff and say, oh, it's just a meaningless side mission to give Finn something to do. That's what the story is about. It's about broadening the universe. It's about broadening the story and showing us, the audience, that yes, the Force will still play an important role in this story, even if the Jedi, as we have always been presented them, aren't going to be around anymore.
Apparently the Jedi would, if people had the Force, the Jedi would sweep in and more or less kidnap the kids.
Yeah.
And the Jedi forced the Force users to exist in a certain way, and now that's not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's the point of the movie. It's not just the moral or the theme of the movie. It's literally what the plot of the movie was about. And you can't
passing the Force on to the next generation, taking out the structures that used to exist and letting it be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why, and it's in a way, it's smart writing too, because that's one of it kind of fills in a little hole that was left over from The Force Awakens, because, people complained about The Force Awakens because they said, well, why is Rey able to use the Force? She hasn't been trained. And they ignore the fact that Luke used the Force before he was trained to. But anyway, they bring it, they make it explicit on screen. Just because you haven't received Jedi training doesn't mean you can't manipulate the Force. If you have a strong sense of the Force, you can still learn to manipulate it in very specific ways. And that was sort of implied with Rey in the last movie. In this movie, it's put right out in the front. It's like, no, this is how it can work. So it kind of resolves that little hole, in case anybody was bothered by that. I also, did you see, go ahead.
I have to say, I guess at some point we have to, or probably should address to some extent, the completely sexist reaction to much of the film.
Oh yeah, you mean the apparently very small portion of the audience that threw a huge hissy fit and crashed the Rotten Tomatoes rating for it because they hated it so much.
It's just, you wonder how these people live. But what does it matter? I really like the fact that, and I just blanked on the character's name. She's from, she was from her parents. She was born in California. Her parents were from Vietnam. And
Rose is the character's name.
Thank you. And I like the fact that there's absolutely nothing in it that would suggest that there's any requirement for the casting. I mean, she's Asian, but that had nothing to do with her character. George Takei, I remember about 5-10 years ago, somebody asked him, when was the last time you were offered a role that wasn't written specifically for an Asian? And he thought about it and he said, never.
Yeah.
The fact that she was cast in this role, I really, really like that. The fact that she was in it and that it wasn't there was no mention of it, had nothing to do with anything. It was just, they thought she was the best actress to play the role. I really do like that. Of course, some people apparently really freaked out about that. If it doesn't have to be an Asian, then it should be a white man.
An Asian character who's just there.
No, who's actually part of the plot. Who does things.
I mean, it's just, well, I think, I can't remember if I made this point in my review of the movie that I posted a few weeks ago, or if I cut this out, because there was a lot that I said that I cut out because it just went on and on and on. But
I know how that goes.
but these people who complain about diversity, and they complain about, and they really reacted strongly to the diversity in this film. And I think what they had a problem with, and I don't know if they just, if I'm not completely accurate about this, or if they just don't realize this, or if they realize it but they won't admit it, because it makes them look fucking racist. But the level of diversity in the film is shown in a way that, when the director takes like a reaction shot of people in X-Wings, just the random anonymous people that are part of the squad, you know, that are part of every Star Wars movie, you know. Almost all of those shots in Last Jedi are of either a woman or a person of color.
Yeah, as opposed to the very first Star Wars movie, which was whiter than a Klan rally.
Right, exactly. Or an alien, right? So it's either a woman, a person of color, or an alien, and maybe one or two white dudes thrown in there too. So it's and to me, and it's
an equitable mix.
Yeah, and that's and the thing is, that's just the way it is. And I think that's the part that really pisses these people off, because it's not shoved down your throat. It's not a conscious, like, intentional. I mean, I think it is very intentional, but it's not like referenced in the story. It's just, this is just the way it is. There are a lot of different kinds of people, and they're just here and they're doing their jobs and they're all on the same team, and it's reality and it's fine. And I think that is the most provocative thing to these people, because they resist this notion that a diverse society can exist and be functional and peaceful and might actually be a lot better than the one we have now. And Star Wars: The Last Jedi shows us this version of the rebellion that is ethnically and ethnically diverse, and diverse in terms of gender, and even diverse in terms of species. And they're all on the same team. They're all getting along. They're all doing their jobs. And nobody seems to have the slightest problem with it. Nobody even notices.
Except the viewers.
Except the viewers.
Small percentage of the viewers.
Yeah, and I think that's what they really rebel against, is the presentation of a diverse society as that's just the way it is. You know?
And then they freaked out. Like, there's a scene where Kylo Ren doesn't have his shirt on, and they got all bent out of shape over that. It's like, oh, what does that have to do with the movie? Why did you do that? It doesn't advance the plot. It's like these same people who still have the poster on the wall of Carrie Fisher in the metal bikini 35 years later.
Yeah, because that was essential to the plot.
Yeah. And then, a year after she's dead, are suddenly complaining about this. Well, boo-hoo-hoo. They're using those Kleenexes for what they're meant for.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's a little ridiculous. Well, you know what it is, though? It's because they felt feels. When they saw Kylo shirtless, they felt a strange feeling that they hadn't felt before, and it made them nervous, because they were
nervous because they said, I can't masturbate to that.
Yeah. Oh no, but you can, dude. It's okay. If that's what you want to do, just do it. You know.
They just go so far out of their way to be upset about these things, and that ridiculous. They cut to try to take the women out, make the movie like 46 minutes long.
It's 46 minutes long. That's one of my Facepalm 5 items this week. I mean, it's so, and I said on Twitter, and
for the people who are this sexist about it, you're completely missing the point of everything. Just stop, go away.
Just go.
Stop being so aggressive. Just get lost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what really I think is the important lesson for people who don't want to be that way is, first of all, just acknowledge the fact that the movie is just ridiculously successful. It's currently at I think it's at number 6 on the all-time top 10 list of American films.
That didn't take long. That's not bad.
Yeah, it was the number 1 movie of last year, and it opened on December 14th. So I mean, it made $500 million domestically before the end of the
2 weeks.
It opened halfway through the last month of the year. So it's a super successful movie. It's super popular. The critics overwhelmingly gave it very good reviews. So it's just this tiny percentage of the audience that really reacted strongly against it for these illegitimate reasons. And what the lesson to take is, they're vastly outnumbered. They're really loud. They're loud, and they carry way more influence than they should, but there aren't that many of them, and ultimately they don't matter. And that's what really pisses them off, is that they can see that even though they make a lot of noise, and even though occasionally they can get a bunch of us to look up and look over in their direction, and maybe even treat them as though they're important from time to time, the fact of the matter is they're impotent. They have no power. They only have as much power to influence the culture as we give them, because there aren't that many of them. Their ideas are often the extreme and aren't considered valid by most people, and all they can do is piss and moan and throw fits about things. And that's what really pisses them off. The culture is leaving them behind. It's inevitable, and they know it. And there's nothing they can do about it.
Yep, that's you just described the Trump voter.
Yeah. Enjoy it while it lasts, fellas, because
another just in broad strokes about the movie, I really think that part of at its core, a large part of the movie is about failure and accepting it.
Yeah. And growing from
it. This is not a movie of great triumphs anywhere. Just about everyone in this movie failed in one way or another. I mean, Luke feels that he failed his nephew so badly he can't even look his own best friend and his sister in the face and ran off to hide because he couldn't bear what he had done. Kylo Ren is trying to commit to one side and fails at that. He can't control himself. He doesn't know where he wants to be.
Yeah.
The rebellion, pretty much everything the rebellion did in that failed. I mean, it didn't, they lost pretty much everything. Even their effort, they go to the city, they find the person to help them with the hacking, and turns out he's not going to be the person with the heart of gold. He turns him over.
Yeah.
In these movies, it turns out he's got the heart of gold and he's going to become a valuable member of the. No, he took the money and ran.
The opposite, yeah.
I mean, nobody in this movie really succeeded at what they set out to do.
Yeah, but yet they continue. They fight on.
Yes.
They persevere. They're standing at the end, and also we see this new generation
is
just starting to become aware of its power and its role in all of this. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a lot like in that way, and comparisons are inevitable, of course. I mean, it's a lot like The Empire Strikes Back, where there aren't a lot of victories in that movie. It's just survival. They go through a very tough trial and they make it out alive, and that in and of itself is a victory because they stay together.
This one had a lot more moral ambiguity with what was going on.
Yeah. And the characters, the main characters themselves were tested not only by their circumstances, but by the choices they had to make, which is different. Like in Empire Strikes Back, it's a lot of stuff coming at you, from the outside.
All reactive.
Yeah, it's all reactive, and with the exception maybe of if you assume that Luke entertains Vader's offer to join him for half a second, which there's not really any suspense there. You never really believe that Luke is gonna say, "Okay, you know what? Yeah, you've convinced me. I'm gonna join you."
As opposed to Kylo Ren, who you really didn't know which way he was going to go necessarily in this, which I like. And I will say the big scene in Snoke's chambers, the lightsaber battle there.
Yeah,
that is a much, much better use of green screen that has ever been attempted by George Lucas. That was green screen that worked.
Yeah,
it served a purpose
because it
was a perfect metaphor of what was going on at the same time, burning it all down.
Yeah, exactly. And the design of that scene, it wasn't busy. It was striking. It was a very strong, simple visual design. I mean, the way Lucas used CGI in so many of the prequels was the frame was just so cluttered. It had these backgrounds where like there were a million different things going on.
Wasn't that something they bragged about? Every scene has so much in it. Well, that's not necessarily a good thing.
I mean, have you
ever seen Hoarders? A lot of stuff is not a good thing.
There's a lot of stuff in those shots too. It's not always so good. I mean, but whereas Snoke's chamber, it's this very striking space. And it's very spare. It almost looks unfinished. You know what I mean? It almost looks like they forgot to put visual effects in because it's just this big red space, but it's incredibly effective. It's a very
especially when it starts burning away and other stuff starts appearing behind it. Yeah, it was really like that. Yeah. That's something that never would have occurred to Lucas to do that.
No. And then when
but they needed enough space there for a set. And all the scenes you see behind the scene, it's like 30 feet of green screen and maybe 10 feet out. You can't do anything.
Right. Yeah. You have to have an actual physical space. And I mean, and then the way his reversals in that scene where, first it looks like he's going to side with Snoke. Then he betrays Snoke and he fights alongside Rey. And you're like, oh, he's on Rey's side. And then he does the final reversal, but it's not quite what you expect either, because he tells Rey, I'm not going to join the rebellion. I'm not going to help the rebellion out. But he also turns against the old version of the Empire or the First Order as well. He says we should get rid of all of it. you know, and yeah, eventually he does take over as the supreme leader, but his version of it is much different, that he doesn't just want to assume leadership of what exists. He wants to remake everything. So
and
even that,
and he still has his issues he's trying to overcome.
yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, when they start blasting Luke and the fire for like 30 seconds, like, you got him, stop.
Yeah, just easy. And then Luke does which was, oh, I love that.
Yeah, it was, and I realized pretty quick what was happening in that scene. It took me a little bit, about Luke, but the appearance was different, and then the footprints, they didn't draw a lot of attention to it. But I really liked it, because when I saw the previews and the scenes across the sand, the salt and the red shooting up, I'm like, oh, more Star Wars eye candy, and it turns out that actually became a hint.
It's very important.
I like that.
Yeah. It's very important, and and it was so well done. It was a very subtle sort of misdirection, but it, like in The Sixth Sense, where if you know what the twist is and you go back and watch it again, you can see all the clues you need leading you to that conclusion.
Well, I realized,
just didn't think to look before.
I realized right away when Luke first walked in, and I'm like, yeah, he's got the shorter hair without the gray.
Cut his hair. He dyed his hair too. Yeah,
he looks like he did the last time everyone there saw him.
Yeah, and what I loved was because people complained about that too. You know, like, oh, since when can Jedi do that? And
come on, the Jedi powers are the just that's machinas. Whatever needs to be done at the time, they can do. It's not like it's ever been nailed down.
No. Well, but what I loved was Rian Johnson, the director, tweeted a response to that just recently, just a couple of days ago, and it was just a series of pictures. Photographs of books, presumably on his own bookshelf. And he takes a picture of the bookshelf, and then he posts a picture of one of the particular books, which is a Star Wars book. And it's like a Jedi manual. And it looks like it's, he's had it for a while. It's like this very nice edition of a book. And he opens to a particular page. And in the book, it describes exactly what Luke does in the movie. So he's basically like, yeah, so fuck you. Just because they never did it on screen doesn't mean that it hasn't been written about in Star Wars lore before. All I did was take it and make it canon. I didn't make it up. Somebody already thought of it, and now, so go sit down. I thought that's
one of those things that's so absurd. It's like, Jedi powers can't do that. Well, based on what?
Yeah, there is no such thing as Jedi power. It's like saying, well, Superman can't do that. You've come to that conclusion, have you? I mean, he couldn't do heat vision until they made it up. Like, come on.
Yeah, and in the early going, the heat vision and the X-ray vision were actually the same power.
They were the same thing. The X-rays just made things hot. Yeah. So I guess to burn something, he had to look through it first.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, and it doesn't mean that you can't complain about it if it turns out to be like weak writing, or it feels like they're just making something up to get out of something. That's perfectly valid. But I mean, in this movie, it doesn't feel like Luke projecting himself into that battle is a cheat. It feels like Luke, it's the culmination of his story.
Yeah. And it took everything he had left. That was send.
Yeah, it's not like he did it and then he was cool. He's like, boy, that was hard. And then he goes right back to, drinking blue milk. I mean, that's it. He expends all of his energy.
But it's weird. It is so weird where people's willful suspension of disbelief will suddenly end. Like,
yeah, at like an arbitrary spot.
Doctor Who fans are like, I will believe that a person can have a 1960s England police box that's larger on the inside than outside, and it travels through space and time, and they go anywhere. And it's piloted by an alien who can regenerate into different forms. And this person goes out and fights evil and saves the universe. And I can believe all of that, but only if that alien is a white male. Otherwise, it's just too ridiculous.
Exactly.
What the hell is wrong with you?
I mean, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with the fact that almost every work of fiction that we love, especially if it's a popular work and it's been around for a while, like a long running show or movie franchise or comic book series or whatever, it's just a string of conceits. And you can take any one of those conceits and completely tear it apart so that it doesn't make any sense. That's not really the point. The point is, are the stories good enough so that you don't notice all of the conceits and it makes sense from a story perspective, and you care about the characters and you're interested in what's happening. There's no Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why Superman has to have any particular power that he has. Every single thing that he can do is just a conceit. It's just, well, he can do this because this is what we decided that he can do.
Yeah. Just about any movie or story at some point has improbable meeting between two important characters who, by any right, should never see each other.
Almost every movie. My favorite example.
Kirk lands on the planet, like 500 feet away from where old Spock is.
Yeah, and then come on, and Scotty's there.
And in the most recent one, they all get evacuate the Enterprise. They all land within walking distance of each other.
Yeah. I mean, movie and the point, but the movie's good enough that doesn't matter to you.
Yeah.
And my favorite example is The Fugitive, where, I mean, that whole movie is nothing but conceits. And there's it's
such a damn good movie.
It's a great movie. And the best example is when they have that awesome chase scene that ends up with them going into the St. Patrick's Day parade, where Kimball is there at the jail.
Yeah, to check out the one-armed man to see if it's the right one. Yeah.
And Gerard and his people just so happen to show up at the exact same time. There's no reason why they need to be there at the exact same time that Kimball is. It's a total coincidence. It's nothing but a cheat in the script to get them together so that Kimball can run for them. It's nothing but a conceit. But the movie is good enough that that when you're watching it, you don't notice that. And when you figure it out later, when you think like, wait a minute, it doesn't matter. Because the movie it carries itself through that.
But that also carries a touch of importance in the fact that because Gerard was right there, he immediately goes looking, why was Kimball here? Well, he came in and did an interview with a one-armed man, and the moment he saw him, he walked out. Well, that's an important point for Gerard to put it all together.
Yeah, they use that for the plot.
That was the key to that. That was the key to that movie. Kimball was sympathetic because he's a person who's been falsely accused of murder and he's going to be executed. What they did, the key was taking Gerard, the person who's trying to capture an innocent man and bring him back to be executed, and make you like him too.
Yeah,
that was why that movie worked.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And then they give you the crowd pleasing ending where they actually get to work together at the very end to defeat the real bad guy. But yeah, I mean that's almost everything you love. It relies on conceits. Yeah. It's probably problematic in that way too. But yeah, it relies on conceits. It relies on tropes or on things that, if you really think about it, don't make sense or are incredibly unlikely coincidences, or conveniences that are invented for the sake of expediency of telling the story. And that's just the way it is. And if the movie is good enough to make you forget about those things or make it so that you don't notice those things.
Yeah. Or if the story has enough heart that it's one that's worth telling and worth watching or reading and going back to again.
Yeah. Then to me, that's a good movie. And I think that's, The Last Jedi is a really good example of that, because there are things, if you just look at it with a ruthlessly critical eye and you take apart the plot, there are things that are coincidental. There are things that don't really make sense.
It's coincidental that they can go at the escaping rebellion ship and the huge juggernaut chasing them can only move at the exact same speed. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Come on.
That's exactly. That's a conceit. They just, that's a situation that they wanted to put the rebels in for most of the movie. And that's just, they came up with some bullshit reason as to why it had to be that way. And that's just the way it was. And if you can buy that, and that's another thing that as a movie watcher and as a critic, I think it's important to give a movie a chance. And I think it's important to just accept a premise, unless the premise is like insultingly bad, right? I mean, that's why I used to have arguments with people.
Lisa, you're tearing me apart.
Yeah. Well, like Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. I've had conversations with Batman fans in the past where they're like, I don't believe that Bruce Wayne would never stop being Batman. Okay,
well, that's not a reason to dislike the movie.
Yeah, it's like, but let's just say that he did. Right, because that's the premise of the story. Let's just say that
a much bigger problem with that movie is how much of it is spent trying to get specific characters out of the way for an extended length of time, and the lengths that they go through to do that. The police used to be stuck down here in the tunnels for 5 months to get out exactly the right month and still have pristine uniforms when they come out.
Yeah,
because there's laundry service in the. But that's neither here nor there.
But anyway, so yeah, let's we both like the movie. We both like the Star Wars movie. I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
Yes.
Am I hearing a siren or something?
Yeah, there's something bad's probably happening. This happens. It happens. You know, when
So that distracted me from. I'm trying to figure if that was coming over the feed here, if that was happening outside here, like the time that you said the 5 minutes of Trump was up and the car alarm outside immediately went off. You can actually hear it on the thing. Anyway, yeah.
Well, because I don't know what it is, but it doesn't happen at exactly the same time. But almost every Sunday afternoon, there's a siren going by at some point, and sometimes it happens during our live streams. Sometimes it happens earlier if it's a day when I'm doing my Patreon stream, and also on Jason and I record our podcasts on Sundays as well, and it almost always happens while we're recording a podcast, and we have to either we stop and wait for them to pass, or you can actually hear the siren on the finished podcast because we just keep going.
Yeah, it's happening at the church again. Oh, for God's sake, I'll send Brad over.
Yeah. Stop setting things on fire, or at least do it a little later. But anyway, we've gone way over time, but we talked a lot about Star Wars. So
we started a little bit late too.
Yeah, we started a little bit late, and there were some technical issues that probably won't be resolved by next month.
No,
but who knows?
We can ask if Pierre has any insights that could be productive.
Yeah. Well, you let me know what he says because he doesn't talk to me.
He has tried. He tried to visit you. Did he ever show up? I don't think he ever showed up. Did he?
He never made it. He never made it.
Yeah.
Do you think
he was actually in the area?
I don't think so.
All right. On that cheery note, we'll wrap up here.
Yeah, we will be back next month to do this again. We have no idea what we're going to talk about yet, but it'll be something. I'm sure it'll be fun. It'll be a nice lighthearted topic like the end of democracy.
Or Charlottesville or gun violence. The cheery things.
Yeah, the odds are something awful will happen between now and then, and we'll just talk about whatever that is.
We did 9/11 a couple months ago. I mean,
fuck.
Yeah, we'll go from there.
Once you've done that,
All right. Take care, Steve, my friend, and I will see you here next month sometime.
Absolutely.
And on Facebook before that, I'm sure.
Yeah. We talk outside the show. All right. That's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you next time.